of Hoyt Penabaker, 1112 Poxon Avenue, Lansing, Michigan, 48910. The recording was made at Hoyt's home by Jim Walkinshaw and Helen Earley of the Oldsmobile History Center on February 28, 1990. This is tape number 1 of 2 tapes.
That look familiar?
Yeah, what is that?
That's an emblem.
Yes.
Yeah, but it's a blown up badge that says wood shop on it. It was a badge apparently that people wore in the plant.
Well, there was one time when I first went to the Olds that they had 2 different badges.
Okay. Did you have a little badge that was about maybe an inch high?
No, I had quite a large one, and it was just a cheap badge
Okay.
because we were new there, and,
Yeah.
and they had the regular emblem, like I think
Okay, the crest.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
let's see, wood shop. I wasn't too well acquainted with anybody in the wood shop.
Well, I thought maybe they had badges that had department names on them, and each department had its own badge because it has a big number here. It has 1,644 as a number, which makes you think it must have been a sequentially numbered sort of thing.
I don't even
I don't
ever
remember seeing something like that.
They shifted me around.
Yeah, yeah. That's why I thought you might have seen different kinds of
Yeah.
badges out in the plant that would have maybe had department names on them.
No, I don't recollect.
All right. Recognize that that's a blown up picture of that.
Yeah,
It's about 3 or 4 times as big as
There
it's
was
supposed to be.
several, or that was the badge that they had when I went there. And us newcomers,
Okay.
we didn't allow to have that badge.
Okay, so that was the kind of badge they were using.
Yeah.
That looked like that. Uh-huh.
For instance, they wouldn't let us walk up through the plant from the Elm Street gate.
Okay.
We had to go way around by, let's see, it wasn't called Olds Avenue then. Isaac, yeah. We had to go way around there up to Logan Street and come in this way.
Oh my goodness.
That didn't last very long. Yeah,
Okay.
Well,
Okay.
thanks.
Yeah, well, anytime you've got anything, I'm glad to, but I just can't place that, place a number on it.
Yeah, well, but that type of badge apparently was what you were seeing there.
Yeah, yeah.
We were trying to figure out
That
about
was the
what the
early
date
days.
was. Yeah.
You came in 1918.
1918, yeah.
Would that have been a badge like you were seeing
Yeah.
around then?
Not that, I wasn't allowed to wear that.
Oh,
Did you eventually get one after
Oh,
you'd
yeah,
been there for a
oh,
period of
yeah,
time?
I've been,
and then was your department name on the top of the badge? Like this says wood department,
I don't remember, no.
but it had a number.
Yeah. See, when I went there to Olds right after the armistice signed, World War I armistice, there's quite a few people, mostly men, that had worked all the way up from 1900, time they all started. And I got quite a lot from them. I never wrote none down.
You don't think of those things then.
No, well, like during World War II, I was on special assignment. Sure, Skinner, you remember him, and Wilford. Well, I guess it's got the years there, but I know Sherrod Skinner, I knew him well. So I got to know quite a lot about the former years. It would be 20 years or 18 years.
Yeah.
So I can remember most of all that, but I didn't never wrote down.
Yeah.
Well, this automatic that we were speaking of. I suppose you'd like to hear something
Right.
about that. You were an engineer, about 40. Did you ever work on any of that automatic? No, you couldn't have
No,
worked
we
on
were working
that.
on any car parts at all.
No car parts.
Yeah, we were working on the plant engineering side of it.
Well, anyway, not to make a too long story, was there anything, questions you'd rather ask?
No, go right ahead on that.
You see, they used the automatic in 1936, 37, 38.
Right.
And they were built by Buick, not the Olds. It was an Olds automatic, but they didn't have the machinery, their expertise, or facilities like building. So Buick built a building to make those in, and special machinery. And later on, they used this building for make the hydromatic. They started the hydromatic there. Later on, they went over to Willow Run, where they had the fires. And so we got our automatics to do, and they were not the most precision piece of machinery that I ever seen. They're built very accurate. They're built so accurate that they didn't use a screw anywhere inside them. Everything was right in place, right side. There's the cover or anything like that. They used just bolts or screws, but they were a very precision piece of machinery, and they during the experiment process, the test drivers they took them around to the hill country, like in New York and Pennsylvania. They call them hills there, but they're actually small mountains.
Mhm.
So they decided that along with the automatic, they would have a standard transmission. Work in conjunction with the automatic. So on these steep hills where they had to back out of the drive and go up the hill, they could use this standard transmission. And there was quite a lot of ridicule around the engineering profession about what did they need that standard transmission on there for when they had so much that the automatic would do. And that was one of the ridicules. So that brings us to Detroit. In the auto show at Detroit, they had a Porsche. Maybe was you down at the auto show? Or either of you? Well, I wasn't either, but I read and heard about this. And they had a Porsche there. You could buy it for $50,000. It was one of the first cars ever built. Porsche built before we built any cars in the United States. And it had this same standard transmission that works in conjunction with their automatic. So they actually copied that Oldsmobile. It was built back in 1936. They copied the idea because they wanted their automatic probably was all right, like ours was, only climbing steep hills. You go to the automatic, or you go to the standard transmission, and it would have a lower gearing. You understand what I mean about that? Yeah. So I just thought I'd throw that in. That you probably wouldn't put that in your book about Porsche, but
No, I'm not.
Anyway, that was quite an idea.
So you're saying that Porsche really copied
Oh, yeah,
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 the
the ideal.
Yeah.
Yeah, somebody that worked for the Porsche probably remembered the automatic being equipped that, well, the hydromatic wasn't equipped that way. The one they made after the automatic, the old hydromatic, it had enough power in that hydro flow there. They didn't have to do that. So, now there was one thing at the automatic. There was three of us. I was delegated to set up a test stand. I myself was from 40, there were
Mhm.
two making. And let's see, did you know Jay Teller?
you know the name, but I didn't.
Yeah, yeah. His wife worked over there in the office, Gertrude Teller. She couldn't have been as good a typer as you are, but she won an award. She's perfect typing, right? But there was three of us. We were delegated to set up this test stand. Every once in a while, they would have to throw one out over on the line. I'm talking about the automatic, and we found that they set up a howl at 40. Once in a while, they had one that would set up a howl at 40, exactly 48 miles per hour. So on this test stand, we could catch that because we had an engineer on this test stand and speedometer and all this and that. So that was quite a problem of getting rid of that. They had several of them. I guess they had several thousands of them that they had thrown out. They had a whole warehouse full of somewheres over in there. I never went over there because I didn't like the idea. Anyway, we finally found out what the noise was and how to get rid of it.
What was causing the noise?
What did stop the noise?
What caused the howl?
That's what we'd like to know.
You never
No, I
found,
never found out.
but you did find how to stop it.
Yeah, in that way, we did find out some. I'll just give you a short story about how I found it. We'd been working different things, turning the gear over and all this and that. And it's quite a job because we had to tear the whole automatic apart. And after you found out the trouble and got it remedied, you had to know how to put it back together. So I'll tell you how we found it. I won't take all the credit. I took the part that this bronze gear was on and put it in a vise. And I sat there on a stool. I said to myself, I want some help up above. And I said I wasn't going to make a move with any tool of any kind until something come to me. So I told the other person that was working with me, I says, why don't we just take some Prussian blue and blue about a half inch from the edge to this cure, and then take a pippin file. You know what a pippin file is? And that's the only thing it was a sharp angle to the tooth. That's the only thing you could get in there with it. And so we put this Prussian glue on there and went around with this file and just cut the Prussian glue off. In that way, there was a very small amount of the gear removed. By golly, that worked. Every one of those that was wrong. And here, before we got through with all this, the 3 years that they made us, they had set up another test stand, but the Buick experts were running that. They were getting it. And so I went over and I says, now, what we do? I says, what would the Buick experts do in a case like this? And he says, well, what are you hollering about? Nobody's going to hold them exactly 48 miles per hour. So what are you hollering about? And well, I said, if they find out that gear makes a big howl, I said, they're not going to buy that.
We don't just sell. Where's coffee makers? That's what there's always
All right.
been. Thank you very much. It will have cream and sugar? No, thank you.
So that got rid of that, and of course they use a lot of those. They call it for parts. You know. This is test stand. We had it in the 64. Isn't that what they're?
Yeah, the engineering building, right?
Yeah, experimental building.
Mhm.
Yeah, and let's see, who was? Oh, Carl Brand was superintendent there at that time, I think. Yeah, you heard Carl.
Oh, yeah.
Yes.
Bud Brand. They came down to Owosso. And we got rid of that way. All right now.
But now Buick didn't use that transmission, is that right?
Yeah, we would use it on their 38 Buick. They didn't like it.
Okay.
Because they didn't know how to get rid of that noise.
Oh, really?
I think anyway. Yeah, they used it. And then, of course, they went to the Hydramatic in 1939. They did an experiment with. They used that same building and practically the same machinery because they had to have special machinery. The olds either had the machinery or the men to know how to run that
Yeah.
machinery.
For making gears.
Yeah, gears, you are, yeah. You've got to be a good gear man. You've got to be born to it almost. I've cut a lot of gears, but there's a lot of them that I don't know how to cut. Let's see. You remember the Burrows?
Yes.
You're thinking of Gilbert Burrow. Yeah. But his father, Frank Burrow, is probably one of the best gear men in the state. We're in the country for it.
Mm-hmm.
He would sit up all night trying to figure out how to, how to cut a gear. Took that much figuring sometimes.
We did make gears at one time, didn't we, Hoyt? Rear axle gears and those kinds of things?
Oh, yes, yeah.
So
when I speak of the olds didn't have the expertise they did, but I'll give you one instance. You cut a spiral gear on the inside of
Mm-hmm.
those. Those designers, they probably didn't know how to cut them gears and everything, but they knew how to do the design. Excuse me. I want to get back to the very start of this. Yes, I've outlined pretty much all the automatic. It was as I say, it was a perfect piece of machinery, and everybody that owned one liked it. Like I say, these people out in Pennsylvania, New York, that had these hills and everything, they thought a lot of it, even though that back here we had flat land, everybody ridiculed it.
Mm-hmm.
I say everybody, but not everybody.
See, that was that a 2-speed or a 4-speed?
No, it was a 4-speed.
4-speed.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
And you still had a clutch.
Still had a clutch.
All right.
Yeah. And
So do you know how you drove it?
You would let out the clutch in low gear,
yeah.
and then you would shift it. Would you shift it, or would it shift itself?
You had to separate it yourself. I forget, I think there was a lever there. Now.
Okay.
See, the beginning of this was way back in 1900. Mr. Olds, he had the curve dash model all made, ready for an engine. And I say Charlie Blades has done the perfect work on it. Emil Roost, you probably knew him. Yeah. He was a painter and a striper. Actually, he was a striper. So he started out over Flint in the carriage works. He used to put a lot of stripes on. You know who we're talking about? Emil Roost?
Seen pictures of it.
Yeah. Yeah. He was a good friend of mine. And Charlie Blades, of course, you read that little book, did you?
Right.
Yeah. He did good work, but Olds didn't have an engine. But finally, Henry Leland, he designed and made this first engine. They call it two-speed Leland engine. And it was actuated, or operated, I should say, by foot pedals, 3 foot. Have you ever seen one of these? I don't know whether there's too many of the real olds around or not. I know one of them tried to climb the Capitol steps here a few years ago. That,
And succeeded.
yeah, he did. Not the first time. No, he had
Leaks on his.
Like they did originally.
Right.
no, but he broke a steering
He
knuckle.
broke it.
Well, it was
Whatever.
yeah, whatever it was, yeah. And it was marvelous the way he got a new one of them made overnight. But let's see, this thinking about this engine that Leland designed and built for Olds. He'd been trying out other engines like from Briscoe and Dodge and them, and he didn't like them, but he liked this one here. The fact is, it's the one that was in the old Scout when it crossed, and when it come back 27 years later in 1932, they went over there in 1905. They went across the country in 1905. And this people that owned the Olds, after they disagreed with Mr. Olds, and Mr. Olds went over to the Rio, started the Rio. Then they went to work and sent this old Scout, an old Steady, to cross country. And that transmission held up all the way over there and back, and then well, it didn't come right back. It stayed over there on the Pacific coast somewhere. So, and when it come back in 1932, we had to tear it apart and see how it wore. And I'm trying to think of who was head of the display then. A friend of yours. Huh?
Bernie E.
No, he worked with Tom. Is it
Tom Hendy?
Yeah. Tom Hendy was in there. Oh, gosh, it got awful when you try to remember names. Well, anyway, we tore everything apart and see how it had wore. And George Halpin was, you know George?
Yes.
Yeah. Is he still alive?
As far as I know.
Yeah, still lives over on Forest Avenue. So we found that this transmission or engine, the engine and the transmission were one unit, see, all together. And as I say, they were operated by foot pedals, and you had your one pedal had high and low, 2 speeds. You shove that pedal clear over, and you get a good start, roll and let it back, and that was in high. And then there was a reverse and a brake. There was three different pedals. So it was more or less from that transmission that the engineers later at the Olds there got the idea of building the automatic. Instead of having operated by foot pedals, they had what they call servos on the inside. They were cylinders that operated at the different speeds, same as I was just telling you about the foot pedals. And, outside of that, oh yeah, this automatic had a governor on it too, like an old steam engine governor. I guess it was copied after that, but that actually, you see a certain shaft had to get up to a certain speed before the shift would occur.
Okay.
Yeah, that was governed by this governor. Now, you want any more questions to ask? But I know a lot of things, but I can't think of all of them right now.
Why, I was gonna ask you, you say Buick was continuing to build this automatic transmission that Olds was using in their vehicles.
Was they? No,
What is that?
they. 1938, like I told you a minute ago, was the only year that the Buick used that. They were building for Olds for
Yes.
3 years,
Oh,
but they only used it the 1 year. And
but
then,
I mean, for 3 years, Buick built the automatic
that's right.
transmission Oldsmobile used. Well, then when did Hydromatic Drive come in to start building the transmissions? Remember that?
When they come into,
When did Hydromatic Drive come in?
1939.
I see.
Yeah, that's when they started the Buick used that new building to build the first 1939s. And of course, later on, they went to building over Willow Run where they had the fire.
Yes,
And
but that was in 1939 also that Hydromatic built the building.
no, they built the building and they started building the Olds transmission in 1936.
But Hydromatic Drive didn't exist in 36, did it?
No,
But when did Hydromatic Drive come into being?
in 1939. Well, of course, the Buick probably were testing them and experimenting on them.
But the
before
division that built the Hydromatic units came into being in 1939.
That's right.
But, well, wait a minute. The first hydromatics were built by Buick,
Yeah, that's right.
and it was not called the hydromatic plant.
No,
It was called part of Buick.
yeah.
The hydromatic plant didn't come into existence until when?
39, you said.
No, that was a Buick.
I don't know when they did shift it over to Willow Run.
See, Willow Run, I think they probably didn't shift to until after the war.
Yeah, that's right. You're right there.
Okay.
So that means they must have made those for 40, 41, and 42 there in Flint.
Yeah, the hydromatic.
Okay.
Yeah, you're right there. They see that all automobile production was discontinued for a short time during World War II.
Right.
And there was a long while that these other companies wouldn't use the hydromatic, or, well, the automatic, and stopped making them in 1939. And like the Cadillac wouldn't wouldn't use an automatic transmission until, let's see, around 70. Anyway, quite a few years later, because they claimed, like also Buick did.
That's what we want you to do.
Yeah, you're just supposed to forget that that's there. Well, why were they complaining about hydromatic?
They weren't complaining about them, but they claimed they didn't need them. They claimed that the back a Cadillac out of the garage, and they had enough power in high speed to do all the shifting they wanted to do. And of course, later on, and I forget what year that was now, either 50 or 70. Wait,
Would have been in the 49 or 50, probably.
yeah, I know it did, because I had a 50 Oldsmobile and it had a Cadillac transmission.
Yeah,
They were a wonder too.
yeah.
The Mercury thought they had a car with a hot getaway, but that 50 Olds I had a Cadillac transmissions. I just said, I took on a good many of them at a traffic light. And Mercury, they figured that you had automatic, and that it was automatic in there, and you had to do all this here, and well, they could just go ahead with all I had to do is the same thing.
Mhm.
Yeah. Well,
Did you say, Hoyt, that Buick used the hydromatic for a little while prior to the war? Not the automatic, the hydromatic?
yeah,
Buick used that same transmission for a little while?
yeah, until they had to stop
For the war.
automobile.
Okay.
And of course, they had all those years to experiment with it.
Yeah.
They were making the automatic. They were practically the same thing. The only thing is, the Buick didn't have a standard transmission
Mhm.
because they had enough power in that hydroflow,
Yeah.
immense lot of power. I don't know too much about the hydromatic because the only time I ever see the inside of one was I had one go bad on a car I bought, and I had to go up Story Oldsmobile, and they put it up on the stand and took it apart right there, and then I could see the parts. The only time I ever see the
Yeah.
inside of a hydromatic, but I've seen a good many of the automatics. Yeah. Now, what else would you like to know about?
When you first came, was there any discussion about making mobile kitchens for World War I? Do you remember hearing of any of that?
Yeah, the Oldsmobile built something of that sort.
Yeah, that's what I mean. Yeah. Did you?
And of course, I wasn't there yet
No.
in 1918, right after the armistice.
So you didn't see any remnants of that activity?
No. The only thing is, this building that they built new there at the Olds, just before the war,
Mhm.
before World War I ended. And if you want to identify it now, you just take a walk the other side of Logan Street, and you see a building with the concrete pillars, posts.
Yeah, it's building
That's the building that they were.
21.
And that's when they were bringing the machinery from Detroit, from the Northway. Northway Engine Company had been building cars for the Oldsmobile for about 4 years, right after Edward Berlin first went there. And so that the machinery they were bringing they had bought this Northway Engine Company, and I was bringing the machinery here to set up. And that's when I first went to work there. They need somebody from the tool division, and we had quite a lot of work. Did you ever hear of the Northway engine?
Yes.
Yeah, you know how it was built. I mean, it was built in two halves.
Split vertically.
Huh?
Split vertically.
Yeah, well, you had a bank of cylinders here, the bank of cylinders here, but each one of those banks was separated. They were
Right.
separated. And they machined this one over there, and then they machined that one, and they put the two together, and then machined the main bearings.
Mm-hmm.
You got a picture in that bunch of pictures that I give you that
Yes.
you got it. What she got there? That ain't coffee.
Good
It's
old
hot water. I'll check
ones
one.
are. Thank you.
I don't like cake. I don't
That
like
one picture in
coffee.
particular, it shows,
Thanks, that shows the warmed up.
no,
Huh?
well, if you want. But that's plenty.
Some of those, like the
This
Bible
picture
page.
shows 4 or 5 pretty hard looking roughies. They were the ones that done the heavy work on this, what they call the heavy 8. In other words, this they had the new fixtures had to hold them on an angle. They had to pick them up, set them there in the fixture, and there wasn't very many of us other ones that cared for that job. So these fellows are all big. You can tell by the pictures that
Yeah.
they're big fellows.
What would you think that those pieces would weigh? A half of engine, I guess you'd say.
They have a block. They call it the block. Gosh, I don't know, but I would say close to
40 pounds?
Oh, gracious.
more than that, closer to 100.
Really?
Maybe about 70. We'll say 70.
Mhm.
Yeah. Now 70 is quite a lot to pick up when you're doing it all day. Yeah.
Then you'd have to raise it up a little bit too, wouldn't you?
Yeah, they had to chuck it up and on an angle. And then of course they had some can't think of the name of that, but anyway, something to hang it. And then of course they had clamps that they screwed. Did you know that the Olds built 5 V8s? They were taken over by General Motors. They didn't build any of their own engines. It was up till about 1915 or 16 something. You probably got into that with different fellows you talked with about how many engines they made, V8 engines.
Mhm.
When did they make these 5 V8 engines that you're talking
The
about?
one I just got you talking about, the North, was one of them.
But what year was that?
Well, that was being built before the end of World War One, and for about 4 years, right after Edward and Lyndon got it, and then the next one was what they called the Light 8. They were all aluminum engine, and they accepted the cylinder block. It was a cast iron. They were machined separately and put in on there. And where they got all their aluminum parts from was from the Ryan Bond Foundry. Maybe that was what is plant 2. And they got their aluminum crankcase and everything there. And that engine was designed by R.K. Jacks. He was the chief, you've heard of him. He was the chief engineer at the Olds that time, under Edward Lyndon. And the next engine was the Viking, or the famous Viking engine. It was a good car, only it wasn't a good car to listen to. It was timed, so it sounds like we only had 7 cylinders. That was but it was a good performing car on the test track. I talked to the test drivers. And then the next one would be the Kettering. That come there along about 1947. You know where the Kettering plant is.
Mhm.
I helped set up the machinery for it. And Kettering, you know, he said as long as they call that an engine, they could have that engine to make it the Oldsmobile. But if anybody started calling it a motor, which it wasn't, they had, you've seen that big sign, haven't you, on the front of the building, Kettering Engine Plant?
Mhm.
Well, that's how it come about. He wouldn't let the Olds have the engine as long as they called it a motor. And good many engines today is called motors.
Sure are.
Yeah. Now, then the next engine was a all aluminum engine. You've heard of that, or it was built by Buick. They done all the foundry work, and, all the machining for that matter. They build it, and they're very good. I owned one. I owned two of them, two different company cars, and they were a very good performing engine, but in zero weather like last night, they were hard to start. So it took them a long while to find out that it was down in there was a solenoid down in the starting engine or something down in there, and they got rid of that trouble. But by that time, the Olds had decided to make that, they call that the Cutlass or F-85, called the F-85, and then in the 1964, they come out with the Olds engine. It was all cast iron instead of all aluminum, and they claimed they could build them $35 cheaper than the Buick could build that aluminum engine.
Mhm.
And they saved $35, you know, on 1,000 cars, you know.
A lot of money.
Yeah. So did you count all of them?
That was 5.
Mhm.
You did it. What was wrong with the Viking V8 other than it sounded funny? Was there anything wrong with it?
No, no. It was all right. I talked with test drivers. One in particular is my neighbor. Did you remember Frank Bodine?
Yes.
Yeah, he was my neighbor, you know, on Logan Street there. He said there wasn't a finer engine built.
Hmm.
But when it was idling, it sounded as though it was 7 cylinders.
I'll be darned.
So that was the 5 engines.
The lightweight early V8, the early lightweight V8, light 8.
Yeah, they called it the Light 8. The second one.
Yeah, the second one. That had a cast iron crank or a cast iron cylinders.
Machined separately.
Yeah.
And this whole engine block was all aluminum. Of course, all the other.
The heads were aluminum.
Yeah,
You remember?
Yeah, your heads were.
And the pan.
No, the
The pan was that sheet metal.
Of course, they had this plant 2 over there, the Iron Bound Foundry. They built aluminum parts for other General Motors cars too.
Mm-hmm. Did they cast iron also there at Rhinebone? You know?
No, well, they done some forging during World War II.
Yeah.
There's something we'll have to get into someday.
Right.
Well, this 65 or 61 engine on the F-85, was that all aluminum? Was the block aluminum?
Yeah. The block was all aluminum, and the reason that Buick trouble, you see, you get what they call a pothole in a aluminum, and it takes quite a lot of grazing in order to fill that up. They were getting quite a lot of them. In other words, the Buick was losing out on it. The Olds, they come across with a 1964, and they called that a cutlass. That was the first cutlass. The 60, 61, 62, 63, 60, 60.
61, 2, and 3.
Yeah, there's three engines there that were all F-85s.
It's the jet fire too. That was the turbocharged engine. Did you work on that?
I believe that was one of these. No, I didn't work on it, but it had several.
It's a fluid injected engine.
No, I'm not acquainted with that. I've heard of it. I've seen some of them that were in the motor. You'd be testing it all there. You call that the jet fire. But then it had
Yes, it
several.
was in the jet fire.
Huh?
It was in the jet fire.
Yeah. I just don't remember too much about that.
But it only lasted 2 years, 62 and 63.
Yeah, I know. I got to it. I was trying to think of the one that had charge then. But they tested them over in the Kettering plant,
Oh,
front
yeah.
end there.
Mhm.
Yeah.
I think Gib Butler wrote a paper on it.
Who?
Gib Butler.
Well, you probably wouldn't have known that.
No, probably not. He was an engine engineer.
He wrote a paper on it.
For SAE.
Where I say I didn't. No, there was two men at the Olds that were master mechanics. I considered. I worked with both of them for that matter, one time or another. One was Frank Burrell, and the other was the father of the Burrell that you know. Did you know Ray Kincaid?
No,
No. Well, he was, I considered one of the best. And of course, it is Henry Leland that made that first planetary, that's the word I'm trying to think of, planetary transmission. And he was an engineer, and he was the father of the idea of the interchangeability of parts, because he worked in some of these arms factories before the Civil War, and he worked in there, and he made them or got the idea across that they should have interchangeable ability of parts, because it didn't sound very good or wasn't very good for to send some soldier way out in the swamp with a part that didn't fit. that was his, and so I don't know just where he did work during the Civil War, but after the Civil War, he started an engine plant down in Detroit. Has built this 2-speed Leland engine I just was telling you about, and he see what else he did. Oh, he was a very good friend of Henry Ford's and Mr. Olds. I call him Mr. Olds. I don't like to call him R.E. Olds because he was the real. But anyway, they were all on Detroit, and of course his 2-speed Leland engine went in the Oldsmobile, and very much of a success. And Henry Ford put in his 1904 Model T. You've heard of that car, Model T. And then Leland went into business for himself and started the Cadillac, 1902 Cadillac. And it also had that engine. So there was three companies right there that that built cars back at the beginning of the century, and they're still producing cars yet. Fords, Oldsmobiles, and I won't get into that about the Olds discount,
Mhm.
but I'll clear that up someday. But, if we had at this time, if you just asked Irma who it was that I bought a car, second-hand car that was about ready to get one of these cars on discount. And the reason he wanted the 1932 Olds is what he wanted, but this happened in 1933. And he says, Pennybaker, he says, I got a car I want to sell you. He's a superintendent. You ever hear of George Van Scoy? Yeah, well, that's who it was. And he says, I want to sell you my car. Well, this 1933 wasn't very good years. And I says, oh, George, I says, I'd like to buy your car, but I says, I couldn't even buy a bicycle during the Depression times. So he says, I don't care. He says, I'll sell that car to you for $100. And it was a nice 27 Londo sedan, and lower upholstering and the whole works. And he wanted to sell it to me for $100 so that he could go ahead and get this car on a discount. He says, he says there's some of the new people that's moved in here. I don't know whether the general manager or not, but anyway, some of the new ones. He says they're trying to get rid of that discount. He says I want to get a car before they do that, and so there's been quite a little question about that discount business, but it actually did happen. Mr. Olds, he told them as long as they used his name, or automobile name to make cars, they had to give the employees a discount. And of course, there isn't any records of that. I don't think it was over 10%. It amounted to very little, but very little was a lot those days. Let's see. Oh, I would say maybe, I don't know, maybe it's more than 10%, but now if you buy a company car, it's 28%. That's quite a discount.
Hoyt, did you ever submit any suggestions on ideas that you had? In fact,
And not any big ones. I kind of got a little disgusted with that suggestion department. The last 15 years, I worked there at the Olds. I worked in 40 down below there. Well, I worked there before World War II, too. But the last 15 years, I worked for Ives. Did you know Ives?
LGI.
LG Ives. He was a good guy to work for. Yeah, he'd go into tantrums once in a while, but anyway, I went along with him. I had to. They was always giving me assignments, and this particular assignment, they just couldn't bore piston pin hole smooth, and the reason for that was this Excello boring spindle, which was about that long. It had a motor right in the center of it to drive the shaft. And of course, this metal that the shaft was made of is it 6140 or you ought to know.
6140 was a kind of tool steel.
Yeah, well, they didn't, couldn't, anyway, the heat in that motor would travel back that shaft and those shaft would start going
Wobbling.
that's the word I was trying to think of. I am not very sharp today.
That's all right. You're doing fine.
Uh, so what that did, this piston pin hole that was boring, they were boring, it would be smooth and rough, smooth and rough, see. So what we did, we started putting spring-loaded bearings on each end, and each one of these boring spindles had about close to $500 or $600 worth of bearings in them, and so we started putting spring-loaded bearings, so that when this heated up, when that motor in the middle started heating this shaft, that shaft would start going this. And I don't know that's going in your.
That's okay.
So they from then on, I had to practically rebuild every spindle and all the plants, like Plant 3, Saginaw Street, and Plant 2, and of course they didn't have the plant over on Wright's Road yet then when they first started that. Although later on I did get some of those spindles, and so what I get back what I was want to tell you about. I found it in machining these shafts to get the proper fit with the bearings. You see, you had to have the what do they call it in the grinder? It's not water, but it's
The coolant.
coolant. Yeah,
Yeah.
but yeah. So that had to be, practically had to be 68 degrees room temperature. Well, it was pretty hard to hold that all the while without some means of like heating it. So I suggested a certain type of a heater. I knew they made it somewheres in the East, I guess somewheres. I made that suggestion to buy one of them, and gee, it worked wonders. It kept that coolant the right temperature all the while. When you're working in tents or half tents for that matter, see a half tent that would be 50 millions.
Let's see. Point
I got to
0.005. 4 zeros 5.
Would it be 50 millions?
Would
Well,
be
you practically had to have it.
50.
What you were after
100,000.
was a sliding, or not a sliding fit, but a push fit. You know, that's that. So that worked very good. And you know what the kind of a suggestion they paid off to me? A bond. I think it was 1875 or
About 20.
$25 bond. Yeah.
And I thought to myself, that's the last time they're going to get a suggestion. Although I do know fellows that made some pretty good suggestions. When they're right after the war, when they started the Kettering plant, or the Kettering plant. We had a Canadian. He couldn't hardly talk English. He was French Canadian, I guess. He come to work there, and he showed them how they could park certain gondolas, they call it, park them a certain way and save the space there. I give him a $2,000 suggestion. That's and but I know others that like did you ever know Al Worthington? He come there to Olds, and he said he was a graduate engineer, but he got a job in the division there, like where I was, and he made a suggestion on there was a press over on the back end of the Kettering plant where they used to coin. You know what I mean by coining? Used to coin rocker arms,
Mhm.
and that was before they had the progressive die like they have now. But they coined them, and all he had to do was turn that suggestion in to make them with that press, and he got around $2,000.
Mhm.
And then he turned in another suggestion uh, for a straightener, and I I happen to be in the position.
Recording of Hoyt Penabaker, 1112 Hoxton Avenue, Lansing, Michigan, 48910. The recording was made by Jim Walkinshaw and Helen Earley at Hoyt's home on February 28, 1990. This is tape number 2 of 2 tapes.
Okay, we're back on.
Yeah, well, the first 2 years they built the Kettering engine. They had a rocker arm shaft. You know what that is?
Yeah.
Yeah. And then later on, as I say, they went to making these rocker arms with a big progressive die. Maybe you've seen that work sometime or it's a wonder too. You start in with a piece of metal about like a playing card, quite a lot thicker. That'll go all the way through there, and there's different 4 or 5 different dies, maybe more than that. And when it comes out of there, you got a perfect rocker arm. And so get back to this press business. This Al Worthington, he turned in a suggestion for a straightener. He'd seen it in St. Louis or somewheres, and so they went and bought one. And I had been assigned to go down in the back end of the Kettering plant. They were having a lot of trouble there, and I didn't have much to do. They said, "You just go down there and stay there and take it easy. Sit all day, not do anything. When you're not doing anything, everything's running good." So I got to playing with this straightener, and I found out just it had different rollers types to straighten with, and I find the right angle, everything. So after I got it going good, they went and got rid of all these little presses that they had used. They had 4 or 5 men using them. They shouldn't have got rid of them, but they did. They was anxious to get rid of them. So it run along handkerchief fall on it.
I think it's in your pocket.
Here it is. Yeah, here it is on the side pocket. Yeah. So at that time, Louis Church, you've heard of him. When I used to work together when I first went there to those. Then later on he became foreman. Then he was superintendent of the Kettering plant at that time. Speaking of, he said, "I don't want nobody working on that straightener but Penabaker. Don't want nobody else to touch it. Well, that didn't go down very good with the tool and fixture repair because they were some of them. It was tool makers too. You know, you had to have a certain classification. So it ran along while, and well, Jim Reinbold, you heard of him, haven't you? He when the Korean War was on, he told him, he says, "I want Penabaker over here too." And so I went to work over there, and at that time you had to change shifts. So I'd work that afternoon shift, and come home and ate my breakfast. And got a telephone call. Did you know Chris Foreman down there in the tool? He was opposite Ives. Yeah. He's calling me. He says, "Yeah, you got Penabaker. You got to get down there. They're running out of rocker arm shaft parts and rocker arms. So you got to get down here." He says they can't get them straight. See, they had to go through the straightener, and they had to be quite straight before they ground them on the centerless grinders. So I didn't like the idea. I was about ready to go take a sleep. You know, I ate breakfast, and so I got down there, and here was Worthington standing there and trembling. And Chris says to me, he says, I asked him to go over to straighten that out, get that straightener going. He turned in a suggestion, you ought to know how to run it. And Al says, I just knew how to turn the suggestion in.
Oh, no.
I could tell a lot of them stories. I just hope that some relatives of some of these people that I try to glorify everybody a little instead of run them down. But hey, he was just a tremble. He says, I don't know how to run one of them. He says, I just turned in the suggestion. Well, he was right in a way. Yeah, Maynard Murray. That's the guy. Do you know Maynard Murray? Huh? Is he still alive?
No, long ago.
So is Ken Mix.
Yeah, he just recently.
Yeah, recently died. Yeah. Well, anyway, Maynard Murray first come to the Olds. First day he worked there, I broke him in on the feet. And then, of course, later on, he went up and he worked over and displayed, didn't he?
Not that I know
I
of.
don't know where he worked.
No.
Oh, let's see. Well, anyway, he knew about my working with these other two fellows on the automatic years before that, and
He was in production.
Huh?
He was in production. He was never in exhibit display that I know
Tom Hendy was.
of. Yes, Tom Hendy
I was thinking they worked together. Well, Tom Hendy, he come from Riker Lumber Company.
Oh,
Yeah. Well, he worked in their garage. He had a big garage there. He had a lot of trucks. I get well. Anyway, Maynard Murray, he knew that I had worked on these automatics and successful on these two other fellows. Two other fellows and I shouldn't be saying I, LOL. And he got to be superintendent of the gun plant, 20 millimeter gun plant. So he called for me to come over there and work for him. And more or less on inspection. I was to check See at that, and when they first started that 20 millimeter gun plant, the Olds only made three parts. They made the receiver body, that's the big body they were in, and the tube, that would be the barrel, they call it the tube, and also bolt,
Okay.
you know what I
Yeah,
mean? The bolt.
firing pin.
You probably was in the army, wasn't you?
Oh, no, I missed that one.
Oh. Well, anyway, that's the three parts that the Olds built. And then, of course, there was dozens of other parts. So Maynard Murray, he told me, he says, I want you to just go over every piece that's in that gun and check them. And he says, if you have any trouble, just come to me. He says, I'll straighten it out. Or anyway, first thing I noticed on the bolt, what they call the bolt, it had a flaming bomb on it. That meant that the government inspector had inspected it, put his flaming bomb on it. Well, heck, the goddamn military, you know, they don't know enough to get in the center of a blueprint and work each way. They start on one side and work all the way across. And I wouldn't want to tell a military man that, but I started checking some of those bolts, and gosh, they were way off. See, the bolt has a firing pin in it, and that firing pin has to hit a little firing cap. So my gosh, I started checking a few of them with a flaming bomb on them, and they were way off, but they could be remedied by they'd been taking their tolerances all the way across. So if they did start on this side and grind the tolerances that way, they would they could work back up to the center of that bolt where the firing pin worked, and it'd be right on center. So I took one around to, at that time. You remember Frank Hager?
Yes.
Yeah, he was foreman on the grinding floor at that time during 20 millimeters. And I knew Frank quite well. He was a pretty good friend of the fellow I worked for a good many years. And I'm talking about the old man. Yeah. He was nothing wrong. He was smart, all right. Well, he says, Penabaker, he says, you can't get by with that. He says, that's got the flaming bomb on it. He said, so I says, well, Frank, I says, I don't like to go up to Maynard Murray. But he's told me that if I can't get anything done on anything that's wrong, I says to come to him. Oh, he says, haul them around here. There were several pans full of them. He says, haul them around here. He says, I'll get at them. He says, I didn't get paid to come over here and haul things around. I got paid to what I could find wrong with the vernier height gauge. You use them. Well, he says we'll get it fixed. Anyway, that ended that. But
What was the flaming bomb?
just a stamp,
Yeah.
like you just showed me in that paper there.
Yeah.
It was a stamp that showed a kind of a torchlight thing and a flame.
Yeah.
Probably was an inch and a half by. That's every part that was supposed to be all right. Like bomb.
So that was an indication of parts that had gone through inspection and were okay.
Yeah.
Who put it on?
The government. The government arson or
The government inspector?
inspector, yeah.
Okay.
But yet they weren't all right.
Huh?
Yep, some of them were not.
No, there wasn't all right. That's why I took them over to Frank Hager. Have them reground. It was possible to cut most of that tolerance away and get back up here to the center of it.
Mm-hmm.
So the firing pin would be on this and hit the little firing cap.
Well,
Yeah.
that was an extra cost operation, wasn't it?
It was on.
An extra cost operation.
Oh, yes. Yeah, well, during the war, in World War II, they didn't pay too much attention about extra. They got paid. They got paid a certain percentage of the force. Of course, this Frank Hager, he was foreman there, the general foreman of the grinder department. He was getting paid his salary anyway. Well, they had to have a man to operate the grinder. They had enough of them standing around that was no problem. Oh yeah, I could go on and on about different things, but as I say, I don't like to. Some of these relatives of fellows that I speak of, they might be alive today that might embarrass them, you know.
Yeah.
But
I
Well,
don't think you have to worry too much about
No.
that.
we certainly appreciate your wanting us to stop and go over the information on the automatic transmission. Quite that it's going to be a pleasing addition to the library. You've answered some questions.
oh yes, yeah. Like if you could think of anything more that you want me to,
Well, what we will do is accumulate things and,
Yep.
and like that picture that we had, when we run across things that don't make sense. And then we'll stop back and see you again, sometime at a later date,
yeah,
if that's all
be
right.
glad to have you. Or if
And,
you want the quick answer, you
we
give
do it
give
over
me
the
a-
phone,
I
yeah.
got a single party line.
Yeah, yeah.
You could talk as long as you wanted to.
Sure.
Yeah, I'd be glad to have you.
Okay.
Yeah, you know, there's a lot. I say a lot. There's some fellows that work there at the Olds and they make a darn good living and drawing a pretty good pension today that they won't even look at that Oldsmobile as they're driving by there. Well, I don't care nothing about going. They've told me that a good many times.
Mhm.
I don't care. You know, when I'd be going to parties and like at Quarter Century Club, and then they have once a year down to the Civic Center. They they have an awful crowd. My wife won't go to that anymore because it's too big a crowd. She can't stand on her one knee there too long. So this lady up the street here that her name is Lyda. You could have met her. She worked at the Olds, so she takes me every year. You see a lot of the old people. And then there's another party that they have twice a year. That's just for tool makers and die makers.
Mhm.
And, these die makers and tool makers that's working, they put on this party for the retirees.
Oh, that's nice.
Yeah, they have quite a bunch go there.
Hoyt, do you mind signing our interview agreement?
Again,
Like
the second one,
that,
Sure.
just to be sure we got everything.
cover this tape too.
That's the same, just like you did before.
The bottom line here,
No, the first one up from the bottom, Lead them in the right direction.
that one right there,
Right here, right there.
put a cross in front of
There
it.
you go.
You put a cross
Okay.
right where you want it to start.
Yeah, okay.
Okay.
I'll go over here where I can turn my light on. I don't know whether you folks have noticed, but well,
Would this light here help?
no, the one at the desk.
Oh.
Yeah,
Okay.
I got it over there. I don't know whether you folks have noticed.
What's that stuff?
My vision is impaired.
Well, that's one of the hazards of growing a little older.
Little older.
I'm used to wait. I really appreciate.
Thank
the
you.
offer. Thank you.
Yes, thank you very
Why
much.
don't I just get these on a lot of forward.